5 Porsches for under 100K that'll triple by 2035. And number 1 isn't a 911? Backed by real sales trends and market data, these are the cars smart money is buying right now. Starting at number 5, the Porsche 986 Boxster S from 1997 to 2004. You probably remember when this came out. It was everywhere in car magazines, and people argued whether it was a real Porsche or just a parts bin special. This is the car that literally saved Porsche from bankruptcy. Back in the early 1990s, Porsche was struggling financially and needed a hit. The Boxster was their answer, a mid-engine roadster that shared parts with the 996 911 to keep costs down. But here's what matters. It drove like a real Porsche. The S variant came out in 2000 with a 3.2-liter flat 6, making 250 horsepower. 0 to 60 happened in 5.9 seconds, and top speed hit 162 miles per hour. Around 120,000 Boxsters were built worldwide, and the S models make up just a portion of that number. Right now, you can find a 986 Boxster S for anywhere between $15,000 and $25,000 depending on mileage and condition. The average sits around $18,000. That's less than a loaded Camry. Hagerty values them at $17,500 for Concours examples. 5 years ago, in 2020, these same cars were selling for $12,000. That's a 50% increase in just 5 years. What's driving this growth? Porsche stopped making gas-powered 718 models in October of 2025. Every month that passes, there are fewer and fewer new mid-engine roadsters you can buy with an internal combustion engine. You're at the age now where you remember what driving used to feel like before everything became electric and computer-controlled. The 986 represents that era when cars still talk to you through the steering wheel. Market analysts are projecting these cars will hit $25,000 to $35,000 by 2030. If the annual growth rate stays around 15%, which matches what we've seen lately, you're looking at values near $54,000 by 2035. That's a triple from today's average price of $18,000. Your kids, the millennials, are entering their peak earning years, and they grew up seeing these cars on the road when they were children. Nostalgia is a powerful market force, and you understand that better than anyone because you lived through the air-cooled 911 price explosion. Now, maintenance is something you need to understand before buying. The infamous IMS bearing failure affects a small percentage of these engines through the 2008 model year. But when it happens, your motor is done. The good news is it only hits single-digit percentages of cars, and you can fix it for about $2,000 during a clutch replacement. Budget around $1,500 to $2,000 per year for basic maintenance like oil changes and inspections. That's manageable compared to the appreciation potential. Watch for rear main seal leaks. If you're shopping for one, get the 6-speed manual. Find one with the M030 sport suspension option, and colors like Guards Red tend to hold value better. Recent sales on Bring a Trailer in 2025 show examples going for $20,000 to $30,000. One sold in September for $22,000 with 60,000 miles. This could be your weekend car and a smart investment at the same time. Comment if you'd put this in your garage. Moving to number 4, the Porsche 996 Carrera from 1997 to 2006. You remember exactly when this came out because you were probably old enough to be shopping for a 911 yourself. This was the first water-cooled 911, and when it debuted, Porsche purists absolutely hated it. The fried egg headlights, the departure from air cooling that had defined 911s since 1963. People said it wasn't a real 911. You might have been one of those people, but here we are in 2025, and the market has completely changed its mind. The 996 brought modern efficiency while keeping the analog driving feel that's disappearing from new cars. The 3.4-liter flat 6 in early models made 296 horsepower. Later, 3.6-liter versions pushed 320 horsepower. 0 to 60 took between 4.8 and 5 seconds. Top speed exceeded 175 miles per hour. About 175,000 units were built, which sounds like a lot until you compare it to how many Honda Accords were on American roads during the same period. Current average prices for manual 996 Carreras sit at $27,000. Clean, low-mileage examples go for $35,000. Back in 2020, you could get these for $20,000. That's a 35% jump in 5 years. What changed? People your age realized the 996 has hydraulic steering, cable throttle, and a driving experience that modern 911s with electric power steering just don't match. You can feel the road through the wheel in a way that new cars engineered for lawyers and safety ratings just can't replicate. Even high-end custom shops like Singer are using 996 chassis for builds, which elevated the entire model's reputation. Recent Hagerty data shows sales ranging from $16,000 to $30,000 depending on condition. A 2002 model sold in October 2025 for $16,795. Forecasts point to $40,000 to $55,000 by 2030. With sustained annual growth around 12 to 15%, we're looking at values near $81,000 by 2035. That's a triple. Think about it. You're buying the 911 you couldn't quite afford in 2004, when you had a mortgage and kids in college, and it's going to appreciate while you drive it. The IMS bearing issue exists here through 2008 models. Fixable for $2,000. Coolant tanks crack. Upgrade to a metal one for $500. Annual maintenance runs $1,500 to $2,000. Go for 6-speed manuals and factory sport packages. The market turnaround on these cars is one of the most dramatic shifts in the Porsche world. Cars that people wouldn't touch 10 years ago are now considered smart investments, and you're in the perfect position to capitalize on that. At number 3, we have the Porsche 944 Turbo from 1985 to 1991. Now, this takes you back. If you were in high school or college during the Reagan era, you saw these on the road. Maybe your friend's dad had one, or you saw them at the track. Internally, this was called the 951. Porsche took their front-engine transaxle design and added a turbocharger to the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder. Power output ranged from 217 to 247 horsepower, depending on the year, with the Turbo S at the top. 0 to 60 happened in 5.5 seconds. Top speed hit 162 miles per hour. Those were supercar numbers in 1985. The genius of this car was its near-perfect 50-50 weight distribution thanks to having the transmission in the back. Only 25,000 turbos were built globally, and many got destroyed in racing or heavily modified by owners who didn't know what they had. Finding a clean stock example is getting harder every year. Prices right now range from $25,000 for driver-quality cars to $40,000 for low-mileage original examples. The average sits around $28,000. Hagerty's Concours value for a 1986 model is $22,000, but turbos command a premium over that. In 2020, these were $18,000. That's a 55% increase in 5 years, the highest percentage gain on this list. You've watched the 1980s go from embarrassing to nostalgic in your lifetime. Your generation is driving this trend because you actually lived through that era and remember these cars when they were new. Events like Radwood, which celebrates 80s and 90s car culture, have exploded in popularity. The 944 Turbo has practical features too, like a hatchback for actual cargo space, which matters now that you're thinking about road trips and maybe taking a car to shows. Projections show $40,000 to $50,000 by 2030. If growth continues at 10% annually, you're at $75,000 by 2035. Think about your retirement timeline. This car could be part of your diversified assets, something you actually enjoy while it appreciates. The maintenance here is different from the flat 6 cars. Timing belts need replacement every 30,000 miles at a cost of $1,200. Turbos can need rebuilds for $2,000. Rust is the enemy, so inspect the floor pans and suspension mounting points carefully. you've probably learned by now that rust never sleeps and cheap cars become expensive quickly. Prefer cars with the M030 sport suspension. A 1988 Turbo sold at auction in October 2025 for $14,175, while a 1989 with low miles went for $64,575 in September. That spread shows how much condition matters, something you've learned the hard way if you've ever bought a project car. Comment if you're a 944 fan. Number 2 brings us to the Porsche 928 S4 from 1987 to 1991. Remember Tom Cruise driving one in Risky Business? That was the 928, and it was Porsche's attempt to replace the 911 with a luxury Grand Tourer. It didn't work, but that failure makes the 928 special today. You get a front-mounted 5.0-liter V8 making 316 horsepower, a transaxle layout for balance, and styling that still looks futuristic almost 40 years later. 0 to 60 took 5.7 seconds. Top speed exceeded 160 miles per hour. This was the ultimate highway cruiser, comfortable and fast. If you drove from New York to Florida in the 80s or 90s, this was the car you wanted. Production was limited to about 15,000 S4 units, and manual transmissions are incredibly rare, maybe 1 in 20 cars. Average prices today sit at $30,000 to $35,000 for automatic cars. Manuals command serious premiums. Hagerty notes values around $39,000 for quality examples. The 928 was ignored for years because it wasn't a 911, but your generation is rediscovering these as comfortable long-distance drivers with V8 sound and analog controls. You appreciate comfort now in ways you didn't in your 20s. The market has grown 36% since 2020, when cars were selling for $22,000. A 1984 928S sold in March 2025 for $49,875, showing strong auction results for quality examples. Forecast suggests $50,000 to $75,000 by 2030. Extending that growth to 2035 puts you around $105,000. Why so high? V8 Grand Tourers with manual transmissions are becoming extinct. New cars don't sound like this, don't feel like this. You've driven enough modern cars to know they're better in every measurable way except the one that matters most. They're boring. The 928 has that special combination of usability and performance that makes it practical as an investment car you can actually drive. Take it to Cars and Coffee, drive it to dinner, enjoy it while it appreciates. Maintenance includes electrical issues that can cost $2,000 to diagnose and fix. Timing belts run $1,500 every 60,000 miles. These are complex cars with more systems than a 911, so factor that into your budget. At your stage of life, you can afford the maintenance and you understand that quality costs money. And at number 1, the Porsche 987 Cayman S from 2005 to 2008. This is the newest car on the list and potentially the best investment. You were in your prime earning years when these came out, probably established in your career, maybe eyeing one at the dealer. Porsche introduced the Cayman in 2005 as a fixed-roof version of the Boxster, but the Cayman was actually better. Car magazines at the time said it was more fun to drive than the contemporary 911, which created problems for Porsche internally. The S model packed a 3.4-liter flat-six with 295 horsepower. 0 to 60 happened in 5 seconds flat. Top speed reached 171 miles per hour. Around 30,000 were built, and manual transmissions are scarce. $30K average today, $40K for a clean, low-mile manual. Hagerty puts Concours at $35. 5 years ago, $25K. That's 20% already in the bank, and the real run hasn't started. This is why it's number 1. The 987 Cayman S is the last naturally aspirated hydraulic steering mid-engine Porsche you will ever buy under 6 figures. The 981 generation that followed went turbo. The current 718 is the final NA and it's dead. No longer in production. Next generation drops in 2026 or 2027 with hybrid and EV potentials. You've watched car eras end. This is the last one. Market forecasts show $45,000 to $65,000 by 2030. With continued growth, we're looking at $90,000 by 2035. That's a triple, and it lines up perfectly with retirement planning for many of you. Demand for pure analog driving experiences is intensifying as new cars become more isolated and computer-controlled. Your kids don't understand what you're talking about when you mention steering feel because they learn to drive in cars with electric power steering. The 987 Cayman S hits a sweet spot of modern reliability, classic feel, and future collectability. It's new enough that parts are available and it won't strand you, but old enough that it drives like cars used to. One major issue to watch is bore scoring. Some engines develop cylinder scoring that requires replacement. A $10,000 fix. Get a pre-purchase inspection with a bore scope. Annual maintenance runs $1,500 to $2,500. Options like Sport Chrono add $2,000 to value. PASM suspension adds $3,000, and a manual transmission adds $5,000 over a similar automatic car. At this point in your life, you know that buying right the first time saves money in the long run. Lock in now at $30K or tell your grandson in 2035 how much you could have picked one up for way back when.